Hi guys, welcome back to Mysteries with Pippa. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel. It's lovely to have you back. Please do leave me some feedback, maybe what I'm doing well, maybe what I'm not doing well, just something to keep me updated with you guys. I've noticed a massive spike in subscribers, so this is really great. And I'm really happy that you guys are doing this and being here with me at the beginning of my journey. Please also do visit my discussion tab. It's where you can keep contact with me. I'll also be posting updates and kind of just keeping you up to date with what I'm doing over the next couple of months with YouTube as I take it more seriously. And you can also contact me via email, mysterieswithpip@outlook.com. So please keep in contact with me. I love it more than anything. But now let's cut straight to the chase, no more chatting, and let's get on with our new story. In November 1971, the day before Thanksgiving, 36 people and 6 crew members boarded the flight 305 bound for Seattle from Portland, Oregon. One of the passengers, who we later find out that boarded, his name was Dan Cooper. So as the flight took off for Seattle, Dan Cooper ordered 2 bourbons with water and ice, and he paid for them in cash. Mid-flight, he handed a note to a flight attendant, and she dismissed this as being maybe a number or some kind of writing on it, but she didn't really think much about it, so she said thank you and put it in her pocket. As she proceeded down the aisle, Dan Cooper then stopped her and said, "Miss, you need to read that note. I have a bomb on this aircraft." So she stopped and looked at the note, and on the note it was described as him saying that he was hijacking the plane and also that he had a bomb on the aircraft. Fortunately for Dan Cooper, he took the note back so it could never be analysed, never be extracted for DNA, and also we're not 100% sure what was said on it. We only know from the flight attendant's testimony that that is what it says on the note. So he had a black briefcase that beside him that he claims that the bomb resided in, and he told the flight attendant to sit next to him very calmly. She did, and she also asked him if he could show her the bomb. He proceeded to partially open this black briefcase, and inside was 8 red cylinders with a bunch of wires, and she kind of took one look at it and was like, yep, that's a bomb. So the reason why he was hijacking this plane is because he had some ransom demands. So he had requested $200,000, which in today's money is approximately worth about $1.2 million. And he also requested 4 parachutes that had to be delivered to the plane by the time they reached Seattle at 5 p.m. So he had told the flight attendant this, the flight attendant had relayed it to the pilot, and the pilot then relayed it to the FBI. The whole time they were on flight, the passengers had no idea it was being hijacked. He kept it very secret and very calm, and they only found out at the end when they brought the money on board. So 2.5 hours later, after takeoff, they landed in Seattle. Dan Cooper, also known as DB Cooper, he exchanged all the safety of the passengers in exchange for the $200,000. He was also very clever and demanded that all the lights be turned off in the aircraft when they landed, and he said this was to stop any snipers looking through the plane windows and getting kind of a really good shot of his head. Fortunately, all the passengers were left unharmed, and they were taken off the plane and transported onto buses. Unfortunately, the 6 crew members had to stay on board as part of the demand, and DB Cooper then suggested that they go to Mexico City. The pilot and also DB Cooper realised that there wasn't enough fuel in the plane to get them to Mexico City, and so they all agreed that they would stop up at Reno to refuel and then take DB Cooper to Mexico City as per his demands. As they were flying off heading towards Reno, his demands extended. He demanded that the plane while flying always stays below 3,000 feet. He also made sure that the landing gear was left deployed and that the wing flaps were left opened, that the cabin was left unpressurized, and that the back where the stairs come out is also to be left to be left lowered. When they set off from Seattle heading towards Reno, 2 fighter jet pilots tailed the plane the whole way there. And somewhere between Seattle and Reno, DB Cooper, with his $200,000 and with his parachute, deployed out of the moving aircraft. After 3 hours, they landed in Reno. The fighter jet pilots said that they never saw anything. They never saw him deploy or exit out of the plane, but they reckon this was because of the weather conditions at the time. Not only was it freezing, I think it was -4, but also it was heavily raining and the weather conditions were so awful to travel in. The hijacker left behind some evidence. He left behind a clip-on tie, and attached to that clip-on tie was a mother of pearl pin. Also left a cigarette butt that he had smoked on the plane, and he also left some fingerprints on the side of the armchairs. Another thing that he left was the extra parachutes that he had requested. So he had requested 4, and as far as from my knowledge, it differs between what research you look at. To me, it looks like he took 2 with him. There was 4, there was 2 new ones, but he decided to take 1 which was a dummy and a really old version of a parachute. He took them too. Also remains the only unsolved US skyjacking kind of crime in history. After the hijacking, when he deployed from the aircraft, all the crew members were unharmed, thank goodness. He was very nice to them, and they were all interviewed separately for several hours. They all gave an identical description of who they thought was Dan Cooper. He was described in his late 40s. He wore like a black raincoat, black shoes, a black to dark suit with a white shirt. He was between 5'10" and 6 foot, so he was considered very tall by my standards. And he also had that clip-on tie which was found, and the pin that was a mother of pearl tie pin. So the first suspect was a man called DB Cooper. He had minor police offence kind of crimes that he had done, and he was only a suspect purely because of these minor offences and because of his name. He was quickly ruled out as a suspect because he was shown to not have had the knowledge of parachutes, the knowledge of piloting, and also wasn't in the area at the time. He also didn't match the description that the stewardesses had given them, and it was thought to be quite accurate because not only did they give an identical kind of description of Dan Cooper, but they had spent several hours with him, so they would know exactly what he looks like, and they looked at this DB Cooper and said it wasn't him. Unfortunately, the press and the media got their wires crossed, and they mispronounced the name while saying it. They pronounced the hijacking suspect as DB Cooper because of the first suspect that the FBI took in, DB Cooper, but in actual fact he was known as Dan Cooper, is what was written on his ticket that he paid for in cash, and that is where the name comes from now, DB Cooper. It was also speculated that they didn't think that Dan Cooper was the hijacker's real name, and the reason for this is because not only would it be stupid to use your real name, but Dan Cooper was a famous comic book strip series, and they reckon that's where the suspect got the name from. So 200 soldiers and many civilians scoured the area for 36 days in an attempt to try and find any evidence relating to this Dan Cooper who jumped out of an aeroplane with $200,000. They couldn't find anything. They didn't find a dead body, but they didn't find any grass that had been disturbed. They didn't find any money. They didn't find any change of clothes. They found nothing in the whole area where they reckon he actually jumped out of. Then in 1980, a child named Brian Ingram, he found 3 bundles of bags, and inside was $20 bills, roughly amounting up to the amount of $5,800. He found them on the banks of the Colombian River, which is not quite far where they thought that he had jumped. The money was severely damaged and quite worn and torn, but it still had the elastic bands kind of tied around the money. Brian contacted his father because he was only a child at the time, and they contacted the FBI, who took a look at the money, and the serial number on the money matched the serial number of the money that they gave to this Dan Cooper. Unfortunately, no other leads since 1980 have been found regarding the heist, and it is still an unsolved case to this day, over 45 years later. So there are many theories over who Dan Cooper is and what happened that night, and so I'm just going to delve into kind of the juiciest ones, or the most famous cases. And there's only a couple, but there are many, so I would recommend, if you are really interested in this case, to look into it. There is hundreds of suspects that they thought Dan Cooper could be, but here are some of the most interesting ones. So in 2007, the FBI did release some further news that they couldn't release at the time because they didn't want it to affect the investigation regarding Dan Cooper. So like I said before, the 4 parachutes that they had given Dan Cooper on the plane, one of them was a dummy. Now the FBI said that this was purely a mistake, yet they, on the other hand, they say that it is really easy to, if you're a parachute expert, to detect the difference between a dummy chute and an actual parachute, one that you can use to try and survive with when you're in the air. A dummy chute is always used to show trainee parachuters how a parachute is deployed, and it's something that you can't actually use when you are skydiving. It won't work properly. The FBI also revealed that this was the parachute, or one of the parachutes, that was missing, and so they believe that Dan Cooper is no longer alive because he would have used that parachute and he would have fallen to his death. The only reason why I am very skeptical of this, and this is purely due to the research I've seen, is because this is someone who clearly knows their aeroplanes. He demanded that it be kept at a certain amount of feet, and he demanded that things be kept unpressurized. He knew how fuel worked and it wouldn't get them to Mexico City. He was very intelligent, as described by the stewardesses, and so I believe, especially if he's going to actually parachute out, he has a lot of experience to do with planes and parachuting, and yet they're saying that he's very inexperienced because he chose the dummy one. Part of me wonders, you know, you get on an aeroplane, he devised an amazing plan, he was very calm the whole way through. This is someone who's experienced and knows what he's doing. I highly think he's gonna plan all this out and then fall at the last hurdle by picking up, he got a 1 in 4 chance and he picks up the dummy one by accident. Another theory is that it is an individual named Richard Floyd McCoy Jr., a Vietnam veteran, and 5 months after the DB Cooper hijacking, he also had deployed out himself a similar hijacking. So it was similar in a lot of ways. It was a hijacking via a flying craft, it was an escape via a parachute, and he also demanded ransom of $500,000. Unfortunately, he was caught and he did die in a shootout with the FBI, but many people do believe that it is this man due to the fact that there are so many similarities. The reason why I'm also skeptical of this theory is that his DNA did not match the DNA that was found on the tie, and he was also discovered to be in Las Vegas at the time, or 5 months before, at the time of the DB Cooper heist. And another theory is that it's a man called Lepsy, or Dick Lepsy. So his family had reported him missing 2 years before the heist, but they did describe that Lepsy did look very similar to the sketches shown, that the stewardesses had kind of taught to these composite drawing people, and that he did look very similar to the sketches. What also was really strange is that the shoes, the coat and the suit did match Dick Lepsy's on the day that he went missing from his family home, but it was disproved later as he didn't have any knowledge of planes or any knowledge of parachuting, so they would have seen it as not impossible but highly unlikely that someone can go from not knowing anything to be missing to 2 years to suddenly an expert in planes and parachuting. There is a final theory I just want to bring up. It's very strange, and the one I'm kind of most likely to believe is Lynn Doyle Cooper. Like I said, I am leaning towards it, but I still am unsure. I always will be. I don't think it's a case that will ever be found out, but I have to tell you about this. So Lynn Doyle Cooper's niece, Martha Cooper, had a conversation with her father in 1995 before he died, and the father was talking about his brother, who's the uncle of Martha, who's Lynn, and the father was saying about how he missed his brother and that he thinks he's still alive but just hiding from the FBI. This startled Martha a little bit, and she asked why would he be hiding from the FBI, and he said, oh, because he hijacked that plane. And nothing more was really spoken about it, and it kind of brought back some memories that Martha had as a child. So the uncle had left to go turkey hunting and he returned on Thanksgiving Day absolutely bloodied up and bruised and in a lot of pain, claiming he was in a car accident. This frightened little Martha, who I think was 8 at the time, and she started to cry, and he basically told her, you know, shut up, go get your dad. It was someone who was very angry and antsy, and she looks back on it and realised he was very serious. Something had happened that day. He was a logger. He was also a huntsman in Oregon and knew the woodland area very well. And it's interesting to note that the DB Cooper had dropped into woodland area. Also a Korean War veteran, and so had great experience and knowledge in planes, aircrafts, and specifically parachuting. And one of the things which brought chills to my kind of arms is that he was obsessed with the Dan Cooper comic series, and this is why this last theory is something that shocks me a little bit and makes me wonder, was it him? So please do let me know. Do you guys have any other theories that I haven't mentioned that you'd like to talk about? I'd love to have a discussion below. And also, who do you think done it? So please do message and leave feedback. Also, please like, rate and subscribe. Don't forget to put the ding dong bell on. Thank you so much, guys, for listening today. If you've made it this far, you deserve a cup of tea. And I am going to be doing kind of a prize giveaway in the near future, and it'll be very interesting because it'll be very personal, because I'd love to give it to someone who's American, but I mean, it's a prize, it goes out to anyone, but it will be full of English goodies, and I will make sure it's very personalized to you. So please do stick around because that will be coming out soon. Please don't forget me, and I shall see you next week for another Mysteries with Pippa.